as an event organizer, we're sitting here going, our number one problem, I think, and number one problems I hear a lot from planners are, how do I get audience engagement? It's okay, that's solvable. How do I make my events more diverse and inclusive? Okay, that's solvable. But the one thing that never seems to be going away is, how do I sell more tickets? Which is basically marketing, right?
How do I break through the noise?
How do I break through the noise? How do I make sure that my attendees who went this year know about when my tickets go on sale next year?
Mm-hmm.
The problem is, if you have all these channels, social media sucks, email sucks, I can't do content, how do I reach people, right? Like, am I going to go up to their house and knock on their door? No, that's not scalable.
Welcome to Events Demystified podcast, where we explore and demystify the world of in-person, virtual, hybrid event AV production and technology by sharing insightful tips, tricks and tactics to make your events a success. This podcast is brought to you by Fan Events, a woman-owned boutique event production agency. And your host is 𝐂𝐚𝐩𝐭𝐞𝐫𝐬, a technical event planner and producer with almost 2 decades of hands-on technical experience in event production.
Welcome back, dear friends, to another exciting episode of the Events Demystified podcast, your one-stop shop for tangible, technical, and practical planning advice for anyone in the events industry. This podcast is sponsored by Fan Events, a woman-owned boutique event production agency, and I am your host, Anka Platon Trifan. As we have embarked onto a new season, in the last few episodes by now, you probably have realized that the graphics are different, the topic is different. We are diving in the captivating world of AI, its practical uses for events, as well as the opportunities and the threats that we should be aware of, as well as explore how this powerful technology is not just changing the way we plan, manage, produce events, but also transforming the way the audience is experiencing events. Today's episode topic dives deep into the importance of community and how staying on top of the latest tech, especially in the era of AI, can change the way we look at events and we look at gatherings altogether. In order to understand what that entails, I am super excited to introduce today's guest, not a stranger to you, my dear listeners, since he's one of our past guests from another season a little while ago. I think it's been a few seasons since last time you saw him. And you can definitely find out which episode that is in the episode notes. I'm not going to tell you because you need to check out the episode notes. So joining us for this important conversation is none other than Will Curran, the founder, chief event Einstein of Endless Events. Not so much anymore, but I can't give you anything on that because you're going to find out more from him directly. Also, the visionary behind the Event Profs community. As the founder of Endless Events, he's also the creator of Event Profs community and the host of the event industry podcast, Event Icons, Event Brew, and Event Tech podcast. I don't know how many podcasts does Will really have. I think he's keeping it a secret. Will Curran has been named one of the most influential people in the meetings and events industry, one of the 40 under 40 event industry leaders, 35 entrepreneurs under the age of 35, and the highest customer satisfaction of any event company in the industry. Will has been producing in-person, virtual, and hybrid events since high school, really, when he started his first company, and has now worked in the management of many large event clients, from event management to business development to now starting his latest endeavor and also keeping in step with the latest technology. Will has a diverse background in growing events and companies to the next level. He's not only a seasoned event planner, but also a pioneer in utilizing cutting-edge AI technology. So his insights on how to build strong event communities, as well as how to take advantage of the latest cutting-edge AI technology, will be invaluable, as he will share his own insights on how to do that well and embrace AI when it comes to crafting unforgettable event experiences. He's also known for his love for the Flash and obsession with the latest tech. No surprise there, right? And he has recently stepped into new roles and opportunities while continuing his passion for growing events and companies to the next level. We are super excited to learn more from Will today. And with that, let's welcome him in and show and explore the fascinating world of event experiences, AI-powered innovation, and the strength of event communities. Get ready to be inspired and discover the secrets behind hosting events. And Will is getting all pumped up behind the scenes. I can see him like with the corner of my eye. We're going to get him right in as we speak. Oh my gosh, Will, that was a lot.
What's amazing is like the production value of your show has gotten like intensely higher than it was the first time I was on here. So I want to give you some kudos. This is amazing.
Well, thank you. But seriously, like putting all of that into words, I feel like after I've already talked for 3 hours, I'm like, Jesus, I can't keep it up. Like I don't know what's happening, but it's so exciting to have you back on the show. I mean, I feel like last time we saw each other, we were in person. It was in Las Vegas, right?
Yeah, I don't remember anymore. I just see you everywhere all the time now. So I just assume if I'm going to an industry event, I'm going to see Anka there.
That's awesome. Well, I hope it's a good, like, oh, I'm going to see Anka versus, oh, no.
Oh, no, hell yeah. Hell yeah. It's always, hey, you're like one of the few people who like energizes me when I see you, like, which is very rare because usually it's like I'm that role that has to energize people.
I think it's only because we're both into trance and EDM music.
Totally. And you're everywhere too. Like I think you're like you definitely like when we're at like IMEX and stuff like that, I'll be like, you were just on the other side of the hall like 5 minutes ago. And you're like, I already saw 3 talks and I'm gonna go meet this person. So I love it.
I'm telling you, don't remind me about MX because I feel like I needed a month just to rest after that.
So that's where it's a marathon, not a sprint comes in, right?
Right? Seriously, like I remember you saying that once to me and then it kept like repeating itself in the back of my mind. And I'm like, gosh, this Will, he was right.
Even energetic people need a break along the way too.
Yeah, tell me about it. Well, I'm so thrilled to have you here with me and discuss 2 critical aspects of the event industry. One is the power of building strong communities, and then the importance of staying on top of the latest technology, especially with AI shaping the landscape for events. And I can't wait to hear more about your expertise and your experience in those 2 areas, because when it comes to building communities online, it's not easy work, but it's also not a new concept. As a matter of fact, actually, I was just going in my mind back in the memory, and I realized that it's not something that I lead with, but actually I founded my first community back in 2013, 2014. It was actually with Shanti Hodges, and the reason why I'm mentioning her name is because she's one of the first pioneers that I know in building hybrid event communities, like communities that are in person but also online. And this one community was called 𝐂𝐡𝐚𝐩𝐵𝐵, now is known as Outgrown. And we even collaborated on a book back in 2018 about 𝐂𝐡𝐚𝐵𝐵, 100 awesome outdoors adventures for babies and toddlers. And it tells you one thing, like at the time I was a brand new parent and I was literally out of my mind, going insane because I had a baby that was colicky and I didn't know what to do, So all I needed was to get out of the house. I was strapping him to my chest and I just go for this long hikes because that was the only thing that was working and the only thing that was like quieting him down. Little did I know that I wasn't the only parent struggling with that. And that's how I came to know Shanti. And as we were doing our hikes together, we're like, wait a second, I bet there's other parents that are struggling with the same thing. How about we put this on Facebook and see if anybody wants to join us for a hike next time? What do you know? In like a matter of months, this one small group like blew up. And it turned into, we had a community of 𝐂𝐡𝐚𝐵𝐵 at the first few years. It was in every regional major part of the US, in every city, growing international as well. And at that point, I started being more like on the technical side of the website because we would have parents submit hikes and adventures every single day by the hundredfuls. We didn't have Circle. We didn't have AI, and the work that it went behind, it was enormous. Plus, if you didn't admit or proof that one hike in the first few hours, you would get raging parents going after you in your inbox and Facebook. Like, how dare you? It's like working with people is not easy, Will. So coming back to you, it just kind of like makes me scratch my head. Like, what possessed you to leave your comfortable corporate AV production job and role to start this madness. Like,
Yeah.
what were you thinking and how are you going to survive? Because let me tell you, after 5 years of doing that, both me and Shanti, we just burned out. Now,
Yeah.
the good thing, we had someone to take on the community, and I got to mention her name, Jessica Carrillo Alore. She's been doing a fantastic job to take this one community that we started and turning it into so much more than that 10 years later, right?
That's amazing. That's still sustainably running now.
Scalable is running and it's got a different type of platform. They're definitely constantly like adjusting to the needs of growing kids, because it's not just about the babies anymore. It's about toddlers, about adults, about families. But it's a lot of hard work to deal with people. We're not even talking about technology. We're talking about the people level dealing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, I try to view them as like customers in a lot of ways. Like the same way that I would deal with, how would I service someone that, was my production client or my event management client? I would basically be like, I got to give them that same level of professionalism and care that they go through. But I've gotten lucky so far too, that because like I've been focusing on doing like application based and also because it's paid, I think that people tend to respect you a lot more. And I think the application plus the paying thing has just brought in the right kind of people. And granted too, like a lot of it has been in the beginning was like, I was like inviting people. I was like, who are the people that I really like in the events industry? And how can I get them involved in this community? Because I know they're the ones that I enjoy spending time with. So there's probably random people who have never met these people that will enjoy them equally. So I think that's helped a lot in like not turning it into, like a Facebook group in a lot of ways. I've done the like free Facebook group, build it up to 10,000 people, chaos of dealing with spam and interfighting and kind of the politics that ends up entering, I think, in a lot of these groups. But, I think to kind of answer your question, like, why did I like to leave this kind of comfort? One thing is that most people don't realize is that like I ran Endless for like 16 years. Yeah. So like basically I've been doing this like almost my entire life. I'm 32. So literally half my life.
It's almost when you get married when you're 16 or 18 and you're like, I've never known anything else. Like,
you don't know anything else.
Like find out what else is out there.
Exactly. But this is the part that probably most people don't know about me when it comes to the community is that like kind of similar to you, like I've been running communities for a long, long time. I think kind of like some highlights along the way, and you don't really talk about this stuff because like it's not really relevant, but like most people don't know that I was a part of this blogging community called Modblog. And if anyone like remembers from the early thousands, there was a site called Live Journal was huge at the time. It was like everybody has had a live journal. That's where it was. It was like your centralized blog that also had a community that had people could go and find comments, leave comments. It was one centralized username. Modblog was like kind of the competitor to that, and it spun off of this other site called DeskMod, which is like make your computer look a way that it doesn't. So like I'd make my Windows desktop look like a Mac because I couldn't afford a Mac when I was in middle school is when I was doing this. So like I was moderating and helped build that community at a very, very young age. I was participating in online chat rooms. Like I had been thinking about participating online for a long time. Then social media came, and it wasn't really like this idea of like an online community. It was just social media. That's what it was. And I very much latched on to social media as how I promoted my company a lot in the beginning. And I think that what I realized is all along the way, I've always been building these communities. I've always understood the strategies of how do you deliver content online? How do you interact with people online? How do you create these senses of belonging together? There's still a lot I have to learn. This is my first time ever building a paid online community, but I think it's one of these things where like what I kind of like reflected back to similar to you is like I realized like I've been doing this for a long time, and like I would say even that the listeners right now who listen to this podcast are a community as well. Yeah. And that was something I kind of realized with Event Icons when we were doing it live was like we had the same people coming back and over again to watch it. And so what I wish I had done though is I wish I had started this when I started doing all my content. Yeah. And now I'm trying to figure out the similar like concepts about like how does content play into a larger community, especially in a world where talk about AI, where AI is going to be writing most of the blogs out there in, a year. And we're all going to be sitting here thinking, well, maybe I want higher quality content. Maybe I'm willing to pay for that rather than be delivered something for free that's maybe made by robots. But that's me maybe.
Well, let me just tell you something. You're definitely definitely a trailblazer in a lot of areas when it comes to the event industry. And I feel like it's something that needs to be recognized as we dive into this conversation. Now, another thing that I feel like sort of uncommon, especially to many founders, is you hiring a CEO to replace you.
Yeah. Not a lot of
You
people
know,
know about it. I feel like I'm constantly still telling people about this today.
And then wanting to focus on this growing of this community, which probably to like other CEOs is like, what got into it? Like, what is he thinking? Like, but no, and you're like, no, you don't understand. Like, it's that important to me. So I want to hear more about that.
Yeah. So like the story behind the like hiring a CEO to replace myself, we were basically, so I've been very entrepreneurial and very driven by like the basic fundamentals of running a business since really early on. Like, I think since I entered college as an entrepreneur, I started talking to a lot of entrepreneurs, especially around the organization, Entrepreneurs Organization, which I participated in for many years. And pretty much when you're in those organizations, all everyone talks about is delegate and elevate. How do you document your business so you don't have to be in it? And what ends up happening is for most entrepreneurs, they do it about 60%, 50%, 75%, but there's still a large part of the business that relies on them. I kind of like don't do anything halfway. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to go all the way. My biggest problem, this is probably my flaw, is sometimes I'll go really, really like into something for a short period of time, but that's also, I think, my ADD in a sense. But one of the things I went really hard into over many years and was like, I made sure everything was written down. If we could figure out how to write it in a step-by-step guide or a helpful piece of information for an employee, I wanted it written down. If someone knew how to do something, I wanted it in our wiki of knowledge. And we've been building up this wiki for many years. During the pandemic, we had such a massive growth of people. It really emphasized our need for documentation, especially because we were hiring a lot of people who this might have been their first remote job. It might have been maybe their second remote job, or sometimes we were hiring people that were outside the industry coming on in. So we started building up this documentation, but because we hired so many people and they got to consume that documentation, we built up a culture of documentation being amazing. So this helped a ton with being able to scale myself out of the organization, because all my thoughts, all my ideas were all written on paper that anyone could go read at any given moment. And it led to, I think, a lot of sync ups as a remote organization, especially when other companies were really struggling at this whole remote talk. I think the second piece that kind of came into it is that I have always had that, that saying, delegate and elevate. I've always had that mentality, almost to a flaw. And you can ask a lot of people that have worked for me that sometimes I will delegate when I really shouldn't delegate. There was always a kind of a joke that sometimes people would be like, Will, this means this time you have to make the decision on this. This can't be anybody else. And I'd be like, oh, okay, I'm ready to make a decision. Here's my decision. But like, I was always about not being involved. Like, I always wanted to make it run without me. And I think the reason why is that there was a selfish desire that I wanted to work on other things, but also I just was burned in my brain for so long that it can't be only you. It can't rely on you. I will admit that as a CEO and everything like that, when it comes to this, it's extremely scary to do this because it's your baby. But also too, I think where everyone gets caught up in is like, if I'm not doing it, is it going to be the same quality, the same level, whatever it may need to be? And I think that's where I got stuck for many years is like, I create the best content. I have the most knowledge about the industry that intersects with all these other things, But it honestly kind of it was actually last year, a little bit earlier than this time of year, and we had like our busiest season going on. There was like so many events going on. And I remember my team at the time, they were like, yeah, we need to hire another person to do this. And I was like, let's not hire another person. Like, I'll just do it for this week. And like, I got free time. And they're like, no, we don't need help. And I was like, wow, we're in our busiest time. And like, I'm volunteering to give hopefully what I considered, I have a high skill set. I mean, who knows? But it was one of those things where like literally I didn't need help. And I started kind of coming to the realization, I was like, I don't think I have to be involved in this anymore. And luckily I had some really great conversations internally with my team. And it seemed like it was the right time to be able to do that. But, I think one of the things that I've realized is that like a lot of my stuff was tied to my identity of Endless itself. So the more that I started including my identity to include things like we're starting to build the community. So a lot of my identity was getting tied up in that. It started making me lose my need of a grip on my baby in a lot of ways. And honestly, I can tell anybody out there, because especially the events industry, which is so energy intensive, is that if you have been running a company for many years and things like that, the one thing I learned probably from this is you also sometimes don't realize how intensely tied into it you are.
Yeah.
and I'll even use the word burnout at some points that you don't realize how burned out you are. You're
Yeah.
talking about the community until sometimes you get out on there too. So I think one of the things was I've been doing this since I was 16, 17 years old. So now I'm 32. I'm in a completely different place than I was when I was 16. I think you realize too, like, hey, maybe it's time to look for that new thing that's going to challenge you and, you know, make you kind of little like start to learn as much as you learned in those early years of starting the business. So
Absolutely. I mean, that's incredible journey right there. I mean, you're almost like half of your life was tied into this.
Oh,
And
completely.
I can imagine how probably at first there's a bit of a sting that got to you thinking they don't need me. But then as you matured into that realization, you probably became proud of the fact that you did what you set yourself to do.
Yeah, totally. That's the thing is like we all as entrepreneurs, our goal is to build something bigger than ourselves and then ideally monetize it to the point where we don't have to do any more work in it. That's why otherwise you're just like kind of creating a job for yourself. And
Yeah.
I think that it's come to a realization. I'm like, oh, wow, like, yeah, this is what we're supposed to do, you know?
And I think there's one more thing that I picked on as intense, passionate personalities. At least for myself, I've noticed that if I don't have other projects to divide my energy to, and I just have one single, as they say, like the one thing, it doesn't work like that for me because what happens, that one thing becomes my obsession. And that one thing, then I turn it into something toxic that is no longer like good, you know? So
Yeah.
then I have to sort of like remove myself for that one thing so I can be productive and positive and add versus just being like there to control every single aspect of it because that's how obsessive I get when I focus on one thing.
And for me, it's like, so like I have a mind where I want to explore a lot. And, you know, honestly, a lot of like what the community was kind of built out of was my desire to explore like community platforms, building out a community and what his role was in events. And shout outs to Kyle from our team, 𝐂𝐡𝐚𝐩𝐭𝐞𝐫𝐬. He like, I basically was like, hey, like, I feel like community is going to be this next big thing in marketing. I'm really feeling like I'm a part of a lot of these communities. And we were kind of talking about it. And then eventually I was like, yeah, maybe at some point I'll start a community, you know? And then he was like, well, when you do, like, let me know. I want to get involved. And then I was just like sitting here kind of waiting. And then I was like, you know what? I just like need to start building this outside of Endless because it can't distract Endless itself from what its core focus is. But I need the ability to go explore this idea. I did that same thing with all this AI stuff that's coming out now. You know, I'm a very much like a, if I find something really, really interesting, I want to explore it because I will always find a way that I can then use that later on in my career or even sometimes immediately.
Absolutely. Well, I think it takes a special kind of person to be able to understand the significance and the combination that goes with community building, but also the technical innovation that is undoubtedly a winning formula for event success. So speaking of community, bringing the conversation back to that, could you share with our listeners from your point of view, the importance of fostering strong event communities and how it can impact the overall event success and the event experience itself?
Yeah. I mean, I can literally talk about this for a full hour alone on itself. So I'll try to like,
I don't know if we have that much time.
But yeah, we'll try to avoid that much. If you ever want that episode, hit Anka up and tell her you want me to come back for an hour.
We can do it as an add-on.
As an add-on. I think if you search my name in the word community too, you'll find recordings of me talking about this stuff more in depth. But here's a couple things I think that are important for people to know about. First thing is first that pops in immediate mind, and this is one reason I went into this, is I think marketing is changing right now, where we used to rely a lot on like content marketing to do our marketing. You know, look at Endless over here. We've generated something like 1,000 blog posts, 2,000 podcast episodes, hundreds of videos. You know, we work all in on content. But what I've realized is like so many people have done content now that it's harder than ever to reach your audience unless your industry is absolutely not doing content, then it's still great. Content still has value. But I think the problem is that AI is also coming for the content piece. Then you look at things like, for example, most people put on ad blockers now. So running Google ads, running YouTube ads, it's not Twitter anymore, X ads now, you know, whatever, like it's going to be, ads don't work anymore. No one wants ads. And that, I don't think that's ever going to like come back as a trend. Oh my God, I'm so happy to be getting ads again. You know, and that's one thing I think about when it comes to marketing strategy too. Is this something that's like temporary or like what's related to the long-term goal of this? The other piece of this too, I think, is that social media is getting a lot of, I think, it's not getting a lot healthier for people. The example that I use for this is that like there's a lot of weird stuff happening with data privacy with Meta. We have like a billionaire buying Twitter and then potentially running it to the ground. So like imagine if you at all invested all your energy into Twitter, building a huge audience on there. I feel bad for you. But then the other one is like too, is like most people then bring up, well, LinkedIn's still doing pretty good. And I then kind of draw people's attention to the fact that like when I log on LinkedIn, I feel like it's the word someone used is that it's very cringe now. We get on LinkedIn because all of our most respected colleagues, our employees, everybody's on there, and we feel the need to like show off because that's what's required to make people then want to work with you, to hire you,
or present this version of professional version of yourself.
Yeah,
right?
professional person. Or then if you get too personal, well, why are you bringing this on LinkedIn? This is kind of weird. Why are you sharing this personal stuff? And are you doing this just for the likes? And that's the thing with these algorithms is that they're all about getting the most likes and comments. It's not about like, I actually genuinely want to have a conversation with you. I want to get the most eyeballs on this stuff. And Anka, you wrote an amazing introduction for myself. I hear that a lot from other people, so it helps my like self-esteem so much. So I like know that I kind of been doing some good stuff, like I like to think I've done. But I get on LinkedIn and I feel like not at all worthy. I feel completely like I'm not good enough. Oh my gosh, I could be doing something better. I could be making a piece of content better. And I knew that if I'm feeling that and I have a really strong amount of self-esteem, like how much are people who don't have that amount of self-esteem? How much are people who are just getting an industry feeling? And so like for me, I felt that these marketing channels I've kind of come in are like just kind of crumbling. So we're always looking for like that's next way to communicate with people. All right, promise this has a point. So obviously we've talked about social media has issues. Content marketing has issues. Now let's talk about email. How many people out there love getting email? No one. How many people actually feel like email is a great way to be aware of stuff that's going on? When a tickets go on sale, whatever it may be, we get more spam than we've ever gotten and more noise in our inbox ever than before. I use a tool that literally blocks you unless I accept you to come in my email account. That's how dangerous it's gotten, right? The problem with this is, as an event organizer, we're sitting here going, our number one problem, I think, and number one problems I hear a lot from planners are, how do I get audience engagement? It's okay, that's solvable. How do I make my events more diverse and inclusive? Okay, that's solvable. But the one thing that never seems to be going away is how do I sell more tickets? Which is basically marketing, right?
How do I break through the noise?
How do I break through the noise? How do I make sure that my attendees who went this year know about when my tickets go on sale next year? The problem is if you have all these channels, social media sucks, email sucks, I can't do content. How do I reach people, right? Like, am I going to go up to their house and like knock on their door? No, that's not scalable. But what I think the value where community and why it matters so much for event professionals in this time is that by building a community and pushing your event attendees to then join something, you're creating a perfect channel that you fully control. That doesn't matter what platform's popular, doesn't matter whether they're using an email spam blocker, it doesn't matter if they don't like content, whatever it is, people will gravitate inside of that and it will allow you to be able to market through them. Then let's tack on the fact that you get 365-day engagement, which has been an event professional's dream for many years. So I think like that, if I had to make the strongest case for it, it's that it's the new communication channel that you own 100% and that you can do whatever you want with. If you get the right platforms, they can send push notifications that go on their home screen of their iPhone. You can do things like message them inside the platform. And then, you know what the best part is? If they're, they don't want the app or whatever it still sends them an email notification either way. So you can still go the old school route if you need to. But I think the power of being able to be on someone's lock screen as a push notification is the 2023 equivalent of being able to be on their social media feed.
Yeah, and it's something to be said about the targeted community, right? Those are the people that you want to be engaged with your content, with your event, and you don't have to send millions of emails to like some random people that you don't even like. They have no tangent to whatever you're doing. So there's definitely a power to not just drive innovation, but also elevate the industry as a whole. Now, as we move into this AI talk that we alluded to, let's start with, how do you stay on top with the latest stack, especially in the era of AI, when I feel like there's another plugin, there's another prompt, there's another something like every single day, right? And how does that impact your planning, your execution, your thought behind the community itself?
Yeah. One of the things is like early on, I was watching, Product Hunt was probably a place that I spent a lot of time. Still, that's probably one of my favorite websites. It like surfaces just good stuff up to the top because all the best products want to get on it to get the eyeballs, right? So I was using Product Hunt a lot. And what I found in the beginning was was it was amazing. It was like serving up all these different, like, one thing I was really chasing was like the ability to inject my own data to make it custom. So I could make like a custom GPT is like, I think one of the brands that end up kind of surfacing out of it. And I was just loving that. But then I started realizing this thing. There's these tools coming out and they all look very unpolished and not very good. So I'm going to indirectly answer your question, is that one thing I recommend for people right now too is don't chase the every shiny object that's coming out right now. I see a lot of people who are kind of playing the, I'm going to build a website and build like a MVP, most minimum viable product, something that barely works, just to see if I can break into market and find product market fit.
Yeah.
Rather than like, sometimes we see tools that come out and you go, oh my gosh, this is so polished and so good. You're ready to use it right away. I'm finding that a lot of those polished tools don't quite exist yet because we're in the wild, wild west phase. So my suggestion for most people is that before I start to talk about like, here's all the cool places to go do this, don't chase every tool that's out there, just because you'll find that you'll waste so much time just setting up new tools that you'll be like, oh, I wish I hadn't even, seen this one.
Yeah.
It's kind of reminds me a lot like virtual events in the early pandemic. There was
and the virtual platforms in the beginning.
So many platforms popping up, and then you're like, this is just like a Zoom call on a web browser. Why am I using this?
The problem is when you invest the future of your maybe 10,000 attendee event in the hands of this platform that is not able to actually sustain that and then you realize the day of the event that it's crashing and burning. Now that is a big problem. And I feel like a lot of people are doing the same thing today right now with AI. You're right.
Yeah, it's like, for me, that equivalent fear is like, I don't want to give a ton of data and then just have no idea where it goes to. Like, I don't want to like turn over all of my blog posts and be like, oh, I want to create a custom GPT that answers in the form of that blog post, and then have no idea where that data goes, right? For me, so the couple areas that I kind of look to stay on top of this stuff, Product Hunt's huge. It just is the best. It's honestly, if you're not talking about AI, if you're just talking about, I want to know what the cool stuff, products that are coming out, Product Hunt's amazing. Amazing newsletter. It's like the only newsletter I open up consistently every single day. The second place that I kind of look when I'm looking at these things is that I'm in a couple like chat groups with people that are really on it. And I kind of look to see, not when someone suggests it once, but when I hear it kind of 2 or 3 times kind of popping up on here too. The next thing I kind of look for is that when I'm starting to feel a need for something. So for example, I was like, man, like I really want to move away from Bing. This is a couple months ago when Bing was like now starting to see its downturn that it's kind of like hitting again. Is I was like, I want something that could be like a sidebar in Chrome, and I don't want to have to use Edge is the browser. I don't want to have to use Edge anymore. How can I do this? And so I started kind of like Googling best ChatGPT sidebar plugins, Chrome extensions. And, I started doing that. And my big thing is when it comes to a lot of these websites and the way I research everything is I look to see like, is there like the top 10 websites that look reputable and actually say they've used these tools? Is there anything that's popping up consistently on these? Because then likely if 5 or 6 of these websites are all saying it's really good, probably it's worth at least checking out. And then I'll add the last little thing that when it comes to this sort of thing is I'll tell you guys that I'm probably pretty boring now in terms of AI usage. I went from like, I was using every tool possible, I was using specialized tools for things, to now like plugins with ChatGPT, and I'm paying for ChatGPT Plus, has been amazing for me. I'm really excited. They just added the feature where you can give it some baseline information and it remembers it for every single conversation.
The prompt, the smart prompts.
Yeah. So cool. Yeah. And then the other tools that I kind of use a lot are the ones that are now starting to get integrated in the tools I'm already existingly using. So the ones that I use on a consistent basis is, the first one is actually Circle. Our community software now has a built-in AI generation. So I'm writing inside and creating content inside the community. I can do all the stuff that you could do within ChatGPT right in there, write outlines, take an outline, turn it into a blog post, all that fun stuff. The other one I really like a lot is HubSpot has a built-in generative AI built into it too. So if I'm writing emails or anything like that, it's already built in there. And I'm so happy it came out this week is that I use Superhuman as my email client, and they just added an AI built into it. So now I just hit Command J, I write a prompt, and then boom, it'll write me an email based on my language of all my past written emails, which has been game changing because now all my emails actually sound like Will, which is very distinctive. Yeah, which is very distinctive. So I've been kind of like trying to utilize the things that are built into it, but honestly, a mainstay for me is ChatGPT Plus for anything text generative on that end. And yeah, I've been really, really happy with the plugins and things like that. And we can happily nerd out if you want on some favorite plugins if we want to later.
Actually, I'm a pro at smart prompts for ChatGPT that I build all the variables into my one prompt. And then all I need to do, like right now, actually just creating the outline for all my podcast scripts is an easy click because I already created my prompts to take from my intake form, from my Google form, all the information. So when I ask about, okay, what's your name? What's your title? What's your bio?
It automatically inserted it as like a smart variable.
It automatically takes it into ChatGPT as variable, and then it turns into an outline or it turns into a script that I can use. It saves me hours.
Yeah, I bet that saves you. Yeah, huge. Yeah, that's
oh
just
my gosh.
game
I was
changing.
like,
what
is this life?
For me, like the feature that's been saving me a lot of time is I think it's called Link Reader plugin. And so like a lot of times will be like, I need to have you understand a lot of context very quickly. Yeah. So I'll be like, for example, we're announcing this big IMEX partnership with the community. And I was like, I need you to understand what IMEX is. I need you to understand what the community is. Now I need you to understand all these very, very specific pieces of information about what this hosted buyer program is. And I mean, because you've gone through it, it's like, there's so much stuff you have to follow and rules and things like that. And I was like, I need the AI to understand. So I just literally just go in and go, I'm going to dump you a ton of information. And I just give it a couple different prompts. So like, read this URL, read this article, read this information. And then it when I start seeing it talk and and understand, I'll be like, okay, now let's write
now we can talk.
An email. Now let's write a blog post. Let's do all these things. Yeah. And then it's like, it has all the context. I'm really excited for the day when I can dump it like 100 URLs as a context or like something like that. Like
blogs that you wrote in 16 years.
Yeah, like that's one of the greatest things is like all the blog posts and stuff like that. Like right now, like it's funny because I'll be like, hey, I want you to like understand as much knowledge. I want to know the knowledge that I have. When it can get to the point where it knows immediately as much as I know on the super, like we talked, the niche topics that we know, that's when it's going to be like absolutely incredible. But like, I love your like variable inserting, like how can you use this to automatically, I haven't gone into a ton of that, like any of the Zapier integrations and things like that on it. But for me, it's just like, it saves me a ton of time writing stuff, which is honestly like what I hate doing.
But let me tell you, like, and I'm sure you've experienced this before because like, for example, I've been in the situation where I wanted to, I actually have hired certain people to help me with the content creation, with just supporting some of the work that goes behind the podcast, the website, the running a business, all the things, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But I could not train them in that niche language that you just mentioned. Like I couldn't, like every time they would come up with an email and it would sound like, don't know. I'm like, that's not me. Like I can't send, like sometimes actually, I actually fire someone over sending like a bunch of emails to a bunch of my prospective clients that were sounding like some person from like Malaysia. And I'm like, I just literally destroyed my reputation with those emails.
Yeah,
like,
especially in the technical world too. Like
exactly,
you'll know like when we were doing content creation at Endless, like really early on, when you're bringing in people who aren't from outside the industry and have to learn these things, like you either find somebody who's really good at researching and really make sure, but there's always that one little aspect that's kind of weird. Like I remember somebody wrote something about cabling. You're right. This is when we were really an AV company, so we were really writing about only AV stuff. And this just shows you how long I've been in this game. It was like why composite is not as good as component, which is not as good as HDMI, which is not as good as SDI. And it was something like, they said something like the P in like 1080p stands for pixels.
Right.
And that would be like an assumption everyone would have is that the P stands, but it doesn't. It stands for progressive. And it's like, it's such a nerdy thing to know, but they put it in there. And this is also one of the things I was like, some random AV guy came to me and was like, hey, just so you know, this blog post is inaccurate. I was like, to be honest, like, even though, yes, you're right, it needs to be progressive, and now I'm going to update this. Who needs to even know this? I was like, why did the person even mention this in the article, So, yeah, that highly technical stuff is,
It's a little tiny example of exactly what I was experiencing, because even somebody that was like a really good copywriter and content creator, when it comes to our language, the language that we speak in our AV world, you have to really be like hands-on in the trenches to know what you're talking about. The example of your little 1080p, there for sure. Well, taking our conversation back to where we started, as we, latest trends, we talked about that, how it's important. I also feel like it's super important to not just at the forefront of the change, but also being aware of how some things, might work and some things might actually just not. And there's challenges and there's threads that you need to be aware of. Yeah. And I'm curious from your point of view, if you see any changes that you anticipate in the way you see community moving about the latest AI changes, aside from content creation, aside from like the things that we talked about, personalized content recommendations? Great.
Yeah.
If it's AI driven in a way that is really, really smartly done, I'm all for it, right? So anything else that you have taken the pulse on and you feel like, okay, I see where this is going, and those are trends that are good versus those are things that there's no point in following this?
Yeah, you've actually participated in one of them. As it relates to community and AI and that intersection of each other, I'll share this publicly. I don't think anyone's going to copy it or run with it at all. But I think one of the reason why community is really powerful is that you can get the answers to the questions that you have that sometimes even the support team for a product doesn't have. I mean, I don't know if everyone's been there, but like I go on Reddit sometimes and I'll be like, I have this very highly technical problem. And I know if I reach out to support, I'm going to get very basic level. They're not going to like troubleshoot through this with me. And so I might end up posting it on Reddit and getting an answer. And then you get really good feedback, really good answers. It's for someone who's super technical, like communities can give you the true answers that you need that you just can't find on Google or a support team sometimes. Or sometimes you might have to hire someone to do. Where I see like the future AI, we've been kind of experimenting with this and you've used it before, is that I eventually see this goal that if you can develop enough critical mass of answers and knowledge within a community, there's no reason why you can't use AI as the front lines of being able to get people's questions answered and
like
to be
the
able to help them with
front line engine search, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Within them,
Within
like
that
content, the data that you've put.
So like in the case of us doing this with the Eventful community, we basically like took ChatGPT and then we made it so essentially when you ask it, well, my ultimate goal, I'll share what it looks like, but we made this like test section where it was like, hey, you could talk to ChatGPT. What we were doing is we were inserting some of the answers from and the styles and things like that from the community. Unfortunately, we're not a critical mass where we have like a million posts in the community. We're really going to like really get some knowledge in there, like maybe a gigantic Reddit community like r/technology might be able to give you. But it's at this point where I'm like, what if in the future, right now you post on a community, you're usually waiting for someone to come and give you an answer. It takes 24 hours probably for you to get a couple answers and things like that. And sometimes that can like feel like a long time. Wouldn't it be great if you could have like an AI at least give you an initial response? And it's even better, and this is one I think from like a community moderator standpoint, that a lot of times as community moderators, we spend so much time being like, this question's been asked before, here's the link to it, here's the answers that you'll need, blah, blah, blah. Well, what if the bot could service up and be like, this question's already been, it's a great question, here's a link to the other articles.
Hyperlinking straight to the answer.
Yeah, and here's a summary of what they talked about in that thread. You can go and learn more on there. So my eventual goal with it and desire is that eventually I'm going to take it out of being its own section where it's like, oh, you just ask the ChatGPT and get the answers like we're used to instead you ask a question like you would normally, but there'd be a first post by an AI with additional resources and things to check out while we wait for the other humans to potentially add their feedback and ideas. And for some people, they might be like, reply back to the bot and be like, this is amazing. This is actually what I needed. Thank you so much. And for some people, they might be like, yeah, this is great, but I need to, this and this and this instead. And then people can then chime in. And then it builds that data that teaches that AI to be even smarter to give you the answers that you need. And I feel like it's going to solve a big problem. This can solve a big problem if you have a massive community with thousands of members and tons of posts constantly flying on in. But I feel like it's going to also be really important. That's where I see a future of the Eventful community is that we're building a really, really, really niche group of people who have answers to problems that aren't getting posted on Google. And like, I want to create a resource for that where people can go to get those things and ask extremely complex questions and knowing that there's experts inside of it. And then eventually those experts share the answers, which then helps feed that engine to be able to help answer the questions even faster.
Absolutely. Well, that sounds like a fascinating new development, Will, and I can't wait to see what the future holds for the Event Profs community with all the developments to come. Now, I'm sure our listeners are more than eager to hear more about some of those plans, but before we do that, we got to take a short break to acknowledge our podcast sponsor and supporter, and then when we will return, Will, it's hard to say all those wills inside.
Having a preposition as a name is the worst. One syllable preposition, don't ever name your kid Will, Bill. One syllable names are the worst.
It's funny because I was like drafting some of the stuff in Google Docs and it constantly wanted to autocorrect that I used to many
lowercase
Will.
Oh my gosh. It's the worst. It's the worst.
So when we will return, we'll reveal some of his strategies that have worked wonders for him as he was embarking on this new journey of building an Event Profs community. So stay tuned and we'll be right back. Before we move any further, I wanted to give a quick shout out to our main sponsor, Trifan Events, which is a boutique event planning and production agency that will come alongside you, offering personalized event planning and technical support, strategic event design, production and technology management, and flawless execution for live, virtual, and hybrid events. The team at Trifan Events is passionate about planning and producing event experiences that get people involved with true moments of interaction, engagement, and co-creation, while offering white glove treatment throughout the entire planning process, enabling you to reach your event goals with the use of creativity, production tools, and event technology. To find out how Trifan Events can plan and produce your event become memorable, go to trifanevents.com. Welcome back, everyone. If you're just joining us, we have the incredible Will Curran with us today, sharing his experiences with community building. That's right. That was a bit of a drum roll there as well. And he is talking about what it means to collaborate, what it means to stay in touch with the technology, creativity, innovation, especially for event profs, and building strong event communities and embracing AI in a gradual, thoughtful manner that can lead to impactful and sustainable event experiences. So with all of that being said, Will, what strategies do you recommend for event professionals who want to build strong event communities around their event and harness also the potential of using AI effectively?
Yeah, so I think definitely if you're planning on doing community, I feel like it's a low-hanging fruit that you can jump on right away. And so we'll talk about that one first, I think, before we go into that, and then how do you integrate your AI into it and everything like that. But if you're looking at creating a community, I always have this advice of just do it. Most people are just too afraid. They overthink it. They want to spend tons of time preparing for it. But in reality is that a community isn't all you. And this is the other challenge I hear from a lot of people is, oh, well, I have to do all the work. I got to do all the management. And I'm already managing an event. Now I got to manage a monthly webinar inside the community, all these things like that. Ideally, when you build a really good community, it grows and wants to manage itself rather than to be managed from the top down. There's obviously, it's a lot easier if you just try to do it all yourself and you like inject your energy into it. But there's a lot of people, I think, that if they were built a community, if you have a very, very strong following and a large audience already, just giving them a space will be tremendously beneficial on there. So the next thing I would actually recommend is that as event professionals, we wear a lot of hats. It's probably the hardest part about being, especially if you're a planner, you get like, it used to be before the pandemic, you're like, I'm in charge of in person. Now it's like, oh, now you have to understand live streaming works and all these technologies and things like that, right? There's always one new thing that you have to end up learning, right? Like, I feel like that's probably the downfall of the events industry is we're constantly like having to learn something new and then we're just getting assigned another role and it's just another hat to wear. I would recommend actually is that for your community, you can get it started, but you're really going to need help in doing this. Mm-hmm. And that means you either got to get like a volunteer community manager if you don't have budget and that's really, really passionate about building this, or the best thing you can do is just get someone paid in it. One of the great things I think about community management right now is that it isn't kind of like a little bit of its own wild, wild west, similar to like how social media was in the beginning. In fact, if you're hiring someone, there's a lot of times if you look at the job descriptions for community managers, a lot of them are just social media managers at some of these companies. And they just like, hey, we're going to tack on the term community. I don't think those are necessarily the same because a social media manager is making posts and responding to those posts and things like that. You know, that's part of being community, but you also have to understand things like how do you launch a virtual event and do a live stream? How do you create I guess content calendar is part of social media, but there's a couple more things I think that enhance it a little bit. But the thing I would recommend is try to hire someone to do it. And they're not massively expensive. I'm not talking about hiring, and I'll use US numbers because as me also looking out for new opportunities, this is the first time I've ever like looked at a job market from completely the outside like an applicant. Community manager roles do not pay a lot of money. I will tell you that 100% that, you know, most of these people you can hire the best of the best in the community management world for under $80,000 a year. We're talking in 2023 numbers right now because probably inflation is going to bump that to 90 next year or something like that. But you can find people really, really good for relatively lower amounts of money. So I think that's a steal because do you want to hire a paid ad specialist now and that really understands Google ads and LinkedIn ads? You're paying 120, 130. I think you're going to get more value from a community long term than you will from ads. And you're going to hire that person for ads and then also have to spend money on ads too. So hire someone to help out. I think that's one of the best things you can do. The next thing I think that you have to do is find a time to launch this that's either right before the event or right after it. Don't launch this in the middle of the year that's 6 months away from it, the event happening or whatever it's going to be. You have so much momentum that the fact that you're bringing all these people together, the anticipation leading up to it is enough to sometimes get the community really riled up. It also will help you in being able to have people post questions and ask questions about your event. And sometimes the community will just answer them for you. Hooray, delegation of work. But the other thing that's really exciting is if you don't think you can get it before the event, is after the event. Everyone's so excited. They want to stick together. They're wanting to know, where do we go now that we've done all this and learned all this? Yeah.
Like promote it highly. During the event.
You can promote it during the event. In fact, like what you should be doing is adding everyone into it during the event and then making it everybody's responsibility as a staff to be like, just talk about, so are you in the community? Oh, you want to find the recording from this session? It'll be in the community. You know, like you kind of have to be annoying. This is a pro tip for anybody out there. If you ever want to get people to do something and know something, like, hey, we have a community. Do you know about it? You got to say it to the point where they mock you. And this is something I learned as like an entrepreneur. So they always said, like, how do you know you've communicated enough as a CEO? When you say it and they kind of mock you. Like, granted, you don't want to do it to the point where like it becomes a stupid inside joke on there. But like once you hear someone mock you, you like, you know it. I don't have to say it anymore, you know? So I would do that same thing with your community to build that up. And then I've had to give one more tip, because tips are good in 3, is that I would find a way from a technology, since we have a lot of tech people in here, find a way to make the login process, the single sign-on, think about that technology and that workflow now, because that's a big problem that even I've had. I tried to make the system I chose to be as seamless and easy as possible, but we recently added on like another technology to the community, and I didn't build a single sign-on provider that layered on top of everything. So it made it so I had to have people re-sign up in order to join an event.
And then they forgot the email.
They forget the email. What's the email I used? Yeah, exactly. It's so
I'm one of those people.
Yeah, Anko was one of those people. So it's super common. So what I would recommend is, if you're planning on doing this structure, try to see if you can find like a single sign-on provider that can layer on top of your event apps, your community apps, everything like that, and make it so when they sign up for that one username and password, it logs them into everything. And I promise you, it'll make it so you feel more comfortable as you switch platforms. If you change event platform, you don't have to have people constantly sign up for new passwords and email accounts, which I feel like is like kind of like the equivalent of having to set up a whole new social media platform every year. So
what's that one platform that you use now, if you want to share that?
Yeah, so we use Circle is what we use as our primary community platform. But I'll tell you right now, we're in the process of trying to figure this all out. But we're looking at adopting a tool called Memberful. It's basically like a member management. It's basically mainly does billing and single sign-on. But what's nice about it is that if I'm going to be able to transfer all the members on it, when they have their Memberful login, which they won't even know it's a Memberful login, it'll just be a community login, it will make it that if we do any event platform, I can then use a single sign-on technology of that literally they click one link, they're logged in automatically. For example, if we decide that we want to use an external virtual event platform for our webinars rather than use the internal one as part of Circle's platform, it makes it just one-click sign-on, which is just so nice. So yeah, so we're looking at that Memberful integration. There's a couple other ones like MemberStack and a couple other ones. Just feel free to reach out and I can share a bunch of them on there too. So
absolutely.
So yeah, there's my initial tips for getting it started on a hands-on thing. But just do it. Like just go after it and do it. I feel like the risk is so low to start this community. Yes, it's going to take time. Yes, it's going to potentially take resources. But let's say, for example, you build up this community and it just turns out that your audience doesn't want to have another app on their phone, which is a common thing that people worry about, or really they're best active inside of a LinkedIn group. You'll find that out really quickly, but I think that the problem is everyone has to realize that the more you build up your community on these platforms that you do not own, it's like you remodeling your apartment that you rent. You're spending thousands of dollars, you're making it amazing, it's so beautiful, but the landlord's going to come to you one day and raise rent, or they're going to completely change how something's done, and you're going to want to get out, and you're going to feel so bad that you've spent all this time and energy investing in something you don't own.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. Also, excellent advice, Will, when it comes to event professionals that are looking to build strong event communities, but also harness the potential of AI effectively. And I love that you shared those AI applications, but also there's actually more. If you check out the link in the episode notes with Will's website, I did go on your website, and I loved actually the fact that you have a list of some of the tools that you use on a
Oh
daily
yeah, my
basis.
favorite
Probably you
things, the
need to
favorite apps
update
list.
it.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's amazing because that actually gives resources to people that they're tried and true by someone that cares enough to put them out there, right? So if you want to
Obsessed.
find some more of the AI applications that will use this on a maybe daily basis, what do we know? Do go on the links that are going to be in the episode notes, along with how to join the Event Profs community, which is a link that I usually share there automatically. So make sure you
Heck
use
yeah.
that link. And then as we come to a closing here, as a leader in the event industry, how do you see the event prof community moving forward with all this AI technology enhancing it? And how do you see it build from here, aside from the things that you just mentioned, like the logging part? Let me tell you, I've had so much struggles and frustrations with other event professional platforms that I was doing events on. And every single time there was another event that I was doing, I had to sign up again. And then I'm like, I already have a profile on this. Like,
Yeah.
hop in. Why do you make me sign
Why do I
up
have to do
again?
this
I'm
again?
like, I'm gonna so
Yeah.
there's something to be said about some of those tiny frustrations along the way that can add up to the point where, like, I'm done with this, right? So making it easy for people is so important when you're looking at starting a community, but also making it in a way that it can be long lasting, right? So
Yes.
where do you see it going from here?
Yeah, I think the event profs community, my biggest goal with the community is to get as many people involved in it as possible, because one of the things I think where a lot of communities get scared is you hit this kind of like tipping point where you hit so many people and it becomes very impersonal and things like that. I very much started when I started designing this new phase where now we're paid and everything like that, is I wanted to pick a way that it could scale up, but then also then create those niche groups within it. So my big thing is like, I want to get as many people in it as possible, because I would love to see the power of an online community at its absolute full potential, similar to some of these LinkedIn groups. Like, there's some amazing LinkedIn groups in the events industry, but they have 10,000 people all posting on one single feed. I don't have time to stay on top of all the posts and follow what I need to follow and things like that. I would love to see it get to that point where like it really becomes really, really powerful. And I don't say it just I want more members because like it's a company and it has to grow in that way. I actually think that it's going to just continue to get better as we get more people. Whereas a lot of communities, it's the other way. There's a kind of a nice in between of size. So that's one thing that I really see in the future of where it goes. The next thing I really see is that my vision for the VenPros community is like, I want to kind of create a Switzerland of the events industry in a lot of ways. And that's one reason why I really partnered a lot with IMEX, is that I've always believed in this idea that I'm like, I don't really care if you want to join an event association and do this. I know that I have enough distinct, unique value that people are going to want to like join it no matter where they are. And I would love to get to the point where, you know, we have so many people that literally can impact change that we can talk about really big topics and affect change in that way. But I know that too, at the same time, I'm not trying to build something that's going to change how we get commoditized as an events industry. I know none of that's really going to happen from here, but what I know is that these associations that a lot of people join feel very cliquey. They feel very much like there's a high barrier of figuring out how to get value out of it. I know, though, that when you build an online community, you can post and ask a really super complex question and get an answer immediately. And that's really, I think, where the future is going to go, is that we're going to get the information, we're going to get the knowledge and everything we can from these private online communities where people feel trusted that they can share the information and their tips and tricks and everything like that.
Well, it sounds like an incredible time ahead for what's coming. So it's just the beginning. And I'm excited to be part of it and just see it from the inside out. You know what I mean?
Totally.
And as we approach the end of our conversation, I would like to shift gears and focus on the well-being of event professionals, something that I deeply value on the Events Demystified podcast, but also personally as a event professionals and also I would say enthusiast. But at this point, I think I've reached post that fitness enthusiast part.
Obsessed.
The moment I got on stage, the moment I got my first award, and it's like, now it's more of a, okay, I gotta keep at it because it really helps my mental and physical being. So because we focus on that whole last year doesn't mean that it's the end of the conversation. So I'm curious,
Agreed.
when it comes to you, Will, how do you personally maintain your mental and physical fitness, especially in the midst of long hours, not just planning, producing, hosting events, but working, on this community that you're so passionate about, and that's obviously coming through just from your words.
For sure. I've been lucky enough that I've seen every aspect of this world. Like I've been there where I was the DJ solo entrepreneur working on weekends and lugging literally heavy ass equipment and breaking my back, my 16-year-old back, Pretty sure all my health issues are now because I literally just accelerated my aging super quick. But the thing that I've seen that I'll try to give something timeless, that it doesn't matter whether you're a CEO of a gigantic event company or you're the guy just starting out lugging equipment or you're somewhere in between, you're a freelancer, whatever it may be. This is the one advice that I give that's been just so beneficial for me. And that is the idea that to understand that you have to not take big breaks, but little small breaks along the entire way. And what I mean by this is I think our culture very much is designed around the idea of there being a vacation that's 2 weeks long, some point in the year. We're going to get a Christmas break at the end of the year. These ideas that we're working our asses off for 3 months usually in a quarterly sprint, then hopefully get 2 weeks off or a week off or a couple days off. And I think the problem with the idea of always waiting for that holiday is that it sometimes just never comes. We get really busy, or if you're a freelancer, you literally, if you're not working, you're not making money, right? There's so many of these cases, especially in the events industry, where you don't get to live by the 2-week vacation thing. I also think the 2-week vacation thing doesn't really reset you. I think definitely do long vacations. They're amazing, but you can't do it as your only shining hope, right? You can't expect to just go home burnt out every single day and then eventually get a 2-week break. And then you come back and you're like, I'm energized to work for another 3-4 months. So my recommendation for people is this idea of basically instead of looking at long breaks, it's about little short sprints. So the way I do this is that, and this came from when I was DJing a lot of weekends. If you're an event professional right now and you work on the weekends, you're gonna love this concept. Just adopt this and it'll change your life. Is that I realized I never got my Fridays and Saturdays, and I was in college at the time. So Fridays and Saturdays when everyone had the parties, everyone was hanging out, and I was like, well, what am I gonna do? So what I started doing is okay, I gotta build breaks in the middle of the week, because I was also working in the office from Monday through Thursday or Monday through Friday, right? So I was like, I got to build little small breaks along the way. So what I would do is I would do things like every Tuesday, I'd have dinner with my friends. Every Wednesday, board game night. Every Thursday, I'd go out and see the latest movies in the movie theater that were coming out. And the important thing is I put it on the calendar. I invited my friends to the calendar invites too. And I said, every Thursday, this is when we hang out. And if you can make it one week, that's totally good. I usually at least another friend who would come in or whatever it may be. Or if we canceled, then I would be go home and binge watch a TV show or something like that. But I always made sure it was on the calendar so it happened, because far too often we keep pushing that time back and that socialization, that fun time. And we say, oh yeah, I'll do it next month. I'll do it next week, and before you know, I've never done it.
Yeah.
And so, but if you put it on the calendar and you do those short breaks throughout the week, it makes it so you feel a little bit more energy, get a little bit more pick me up to then get you through working through the weekend and then doing that cycle over and over again. And then when you have time for a week-long vacation, really disconnect, really go in the middle of nowhere with no cell service. Those sort of things I think are really helpful. But the problem is just always waiting for that break and making your home routine just being, I would highly recommend, don't make your home routine, I only watch television at night too. Turn it into something social. Give it a chance to see your friends.
Yeah.
You have to schedule that time, because otherwise what ends up happening is your friends will start realizing you're really busy. They'll stop inviting you to things. And that's when it starts to go really downhill and can get really scary really fast.
Yeah. And then before you know it, you're alone, suffering from depression and thinking I don't have anyone around me. Well, it's true. It takes intentionality and scheduling things on the calendar. I'm a huge proponent of that. The reason why I work out 3 hours a day and I don't exaggerate 6 days a week is because it's blocked on my calendar. I don't have a choice.
Yeah.
It's there.
Yeah, exactly. And it makes it easy to follow that routine, and it helps it because you basically make that activity you're doing part of your routine that you fall into. It becomes the rule rather than the exception to the rule.
Exactly. Yeah. And then I feel especially in the context of keeping in touch with people and building a community, you need people to build communities. If you're not a person and you're just there once a month, it's not going to work out. So I love those tips, and we can definitely all take note of it. And if it works for Will, it must work for you. So make sure you put it on your calendar.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Will, for sharing those wise words, and also for inspiring a lot of event professionals when it comes to embracing technology, and the reason why the strength of a community is something that really works and can take their events to new heights. Now, as we really come to a close, for anyone that's just listening to the podcast, would you share with our audience where they connect with you verbally so they can hear that, not just, see it?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the easiest way to find me and where I'm at and everything is just willcurran.com. So just my name.com. All my links, my favorite apps is on there, my favorite things, my links to my LinkedIn is my only social I do, and then also links to the community are on there, all that fun stuff. Just go to willcurran.com. You can find even my SoundCloud with all my DJ mixes from the last 20 years of DJing on there too.
I love it. Well, friends, this is it. Thank you, Will, again for joining me today. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning into this episode. If you enjoy our conversation with Will Curran, don't forget to subscribe to Events Demystified podcast to stay updated on future episodes. And until next time, keep innovating, keep building strong event communities, or just join Will's community and keep crafting unforgettable event experiences that leave a long-lasting legacy. And with this is your host, Anka, signing off. Thank you, Will.
Thank
Everyone,
you.
See you on the other side.
Thank you for listening to the Events Demystified podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, please take a moment to review it, rate it, and share it with other event professionals that could benefit from it. Connect with us on social at Events Demystified Podcast. We would love to hear from you and what you're up to. If you'd like to learn more about Tree Fan Event services and find out if we're a good fit in supporting your event, can we help your event be successful with a 20-minute free consultation? Link in the episode's notes. Thanks for tuning in.